Good morning, Spartans. How are you today? Thank you so much for being here. We have some really great employers here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and introduce our employer representatives. And we'll go ahead and introduce them in the order that I see them here. So first up, we have Janet Bashtel from Lockheed Martin. Janet, if you don't mind introducing yourself, just let us know what your major was and just let us know, well, I guess we already know what your job title is, but maybe just describe a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Janet Bastel, and I am a campus relations manager for Lockheed Martin. And I've only been with Lockheed Martin for a short period of time. It'll be 2 years coming up in November. Prior to that, I spent a couple of years doing consulting work. Prior to that, I spent 34 years in the hospitality industry with Marriott International, where 20 of those years were spent with campus relations. One of the reasons that I came on board with Lockheed Martin is I missed working with students. So I'm happy to be back in the game. When I was going to school, moons ago, obviously, is I wanted to get into the employee relations game. And so I studied a multidisciplinary program of human resources, psychology, and at one point I thought I was going to law school. So I actually started out as a political science major. So where you're going to end up in your career is not always based on, you know, what's happening there at college, but take every opportunity to learn and grow. That's my story, and I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you so much, Janet. I don't think Omid from Texas Instruments is here just yet. So we'll go ahead and Bill Mantle for HPE, if you could please introduce yourself to the students, let us know what your major was, and then just describe a little bit about what you do.
Sure, and welcome everyone. So I'm Bill Manell. I'm the Vice President and General Manager for High Performance Computing at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. My major at San Jose State was my MBA, actually, that I got there. And what I do is I run a global business. It's in the billions of dollars from that standpoint. So we sell into 34 countries directly and a lot of other countries indirectly from that standpoint. And we provide actually some of the largest supercomputers in the world from that perspective for the public sector, defense, all the major autos, airplane manufacturers, pharmaceuticals, hospitals, those things as well from that perspective. And, you know, I started out my career actually in the Air Force. I sat behind the pilot in an F-4 Phantom back a long time ago. And so, you know, as people have been saying, you know, from that to where I am today, I took some interesting career opportunities. It just kind of happened and came up. So definitely the last speaker said a lot about, you know, taking opportunities when they come up. And, you know, that's definitely has been my career.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bill. I'm not sure if Omid has shown up yet. Omid, are you there? Okay. Sounds like he's not here yet. So we'll go ahead and move on with the questions. So the first question, and I'll direct this to Janet, and then Bill, you can answer after. But Janet, were there experiences from college that helped you prepare for this position, such as internships, clubs, and organizations?
So definitely, I had an opportunity to do an internship, knowing that as I finished up my studies that human resources was the direction that I wanted to go. And I was very fortunate to have done an internship that was related to employment, that was on the professional employment side right at the university. And I went to Michigan State, where I had the opportunity to start getting involved with, you know, taking applications, reviewing applications, and even had the opportunity to sit in on some interviews. I also at one point thought that I was going to be interested in going on to grad school to get my master's in labor industrial relations. And at that time, the university had about 13 unions that were represented. So I was studying union contracts and had the opportunity to sit in a couple of negotiations. And just kind of based on that experience, it really helped me to understand which direction I might want to go in my early career. And my focus really was in the employment sector, which is where, you know, I continued to grow my career after. I also tell students to do as I tell you and not necessarily as I did, because I didn't always take advantage of the opportunity to get involved with different organizations while I was going to school. I had a need to be able to work while I was going to school, which kind of took me away from the opportunity to get involved with some clubs and organizations, which is something that as I, you know, ended my career at school, that I really wish I would have taken advantage of that. And it's not about getting involved with a multitude of organizations, but it's about finding what is important to you and finding what is that one organization that, number one, is going to be meaningful to your personal development, and that also that you can be an active member too. So again, like I said, is don't necessarily do what I do, but take that opportunity to get yourself involved while you're on campus, because it helps with that networking component that I had to learn a little bit more after I graduated from college than having the opportunity to practice while I was in school.
Great. Thank you so much, Janet. Let's see here. So just to let you know, it looks like Omid is having a little bit of technical issues. So it looks like he's going to call in here soon. One thing I forgot to mention, my name is Lisa Tchaikovsky. I'm the Assistant Director of Employer Engagement. So I am in charge of all things employer related. And part of my job is reaching out to employers to bring them to campus to connect, network, and hire our students, or recruit and hire our students. Okay, so Bill, go ahead and if you don't mind.
Hey, I'm in. If you guys can hear me, it's Omid. Hey.
Oh, hi, Omid.
Hey.
Hello. Can you hold for just 1 minute? We'll have you introduce yourself.
Absolutely.
Here. So just, you know, just a few minutes. Bill, could you tell us about your experiences from college that helped you prepare for the position that you're in now? Any internships, clubs, and organizations?
Yeah, and I was, you know, interestingly, and I don't know whether it's our age, Janet, but I was kind of in the same boat as Janet. I had to work to you know, to get me through school from that standpoint. So, and you know, I have to say that that by itself was a really good experience. So having the responsibility of you know, holding down a job, having to show up every day, you know, making a paycheck, you know, working with a team sort of thing was you know, really prepared me well for my career. And also having to obviously juggle, you know, studies and other work and social life and those sorts of things was a challenge, but it did prepare me for that. I think the Itza talking about grit and those sorts of things. Yeah, you know, when you did feel like it, you had to get up and go to work, or you worked and then when you came home, you had to study, you know, so it was tough, but you know, it was helpful from that standpoint. You know, certainly, you know, I'm from a different generation, so it helped, you know, being able to, I think there's a lot more things available probably for a lot of you. So I'd certainly take advantage of all the experiences you have, the clubs and so forth that are out there.
Great, thank you, Bill. Omid, would you introduce yourself to everyone and let us know what your major was? And also just tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, sure. And sorry, guys, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties here and just getting into Zoom, so apologies there. But yeah, I'm Omid. So I'm based here in Santa Clara. I studied electrical engineering, and I work at a company called Texas Instruments. And what I do is technical sales. So I've been there for about 6 or so years. And yeah, a little bit about what I do is I sell basically chips, silicon, semiconductors to a client here in Cupertino. So I sell chips to Apple. Basically what that looks like is understanding their needs up front, understanding what they want and what they want to do in next-gen products, and then taking that back and defining that into attributes and silicon and how to make it into an actual electronic component that they can use to do whatever their end goal is at the end of the day.
Perfect. Thank you, Omid. And I'm real sorry that you had some technical difficulties. So we're very happy that you're here today. So thank you so much.
Thank
Omid,
you.
I'm going to ask you a question. Were there experiences from college that helped you prepare for this position? Any internships, clubs, or organizations that you might have been involved in?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, maybe there was a couple. It was actually just getting the knit and grit of just like working. So I actually interned at Mercedes-Benz for 2 different roles. So that was definitely helpful because that helped me kind of understand what I liked and didn't like doing the 2 different roles. And then also within that, I was actually working full time while I was in college. So just like working while being in college, as someone else also mentioned, is super helpful, or was helpful for me, because I was able to, I mean, you have a full day's work plus having to still juggle all the college stuff. So understanding how to prioritize all the things that I had to do was actually really, really helpful. And then in addition to that, what I did while I was in college in terms of working was I actually worked at T-Mobile doing sales. So that was a lot of the communication aspect, talking to people, figuring out what they wanted in a phone. And then when I worked at Mercedes, it was a lot more technical. So it was a lot more like, hey, how can we build cars faster? What do we need to do on this production line versus that? So taking the 2 and understanding like the technical piece plus the selling piece for me, those were 2 big experiences that I feel like just in terms of work helped a lot. Some other things, like I said, was like just understanding what I liked and didn't like by being able to work in multiple facets of 2 different companies. That was super helpful. So yeah, I think those are 2 key ones. The other one that I'll just note is I was actually in SWE, which is Society for Women's Engineer. Basically, the goal there is to help grow the number of women that are coming out of STEM. So I thought that was helpful. I was actually the vice president of that. I know it's kind of weird, but you know, as long as you're part of that same common goal, I think it's good. So working a leadership position there, I think was super helpful and gave me some definitely better communication. It gave me just a multiple range of things. So getting involved in any club organization at a leadership level, or even at a level where you're actually contributing and working with others, I think is definitely monumental as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Omid. Janet, I'm going to move over to you. What would you look for to demonstrate leadership on an applicant resume or LinkedIn profile? And 2, is there something that you would recommend students to add to show remote skills specifically?
So on the leadership component, as Omid kind of indicated, is if you are part of a student organization and have the opportunity to become a leader, that is definitely, you know, a bonus. And it does help us to understand your leadership skills, because you have people, you know, when you're in a student-run organization, is you're responsible for helping to develop that organization without necessarily a lot of oversight. And I say that because, you know, students who are part of an organization, they have different reasons for wanting to do it, but they also have a lot of other things going on. So when you're organizing an activity, is your ability to get people to involve and follow through definitely is a skill set that is going to be helpful as you continue throughout your career. How do you share that, you know, the working remote on your resume? So I've been working remote for a long time. I was working remote before it was the cool thing to do. And in fact, you know, you all, a lot of you are in California. I'm calling in from my home at the Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri. And and next fall, hopefully, I'll be back on the road coming out to California to visit you. But one of the things is very, you know, it's easy just to say that you've had the opportunity to work in a remote environment. What is the team that you're working with or through? So are you a part of a group or an organization? If you're managing the work of somebody else, again, those are key factors of how do you share that within, you know, your 5 to 6 bullet points. And it's just, for me, is, you know, because again, when I transitioned away from the corporate environment and was looking for a new opportunity, it was my ability to work in a remote environment with a team of, you know, 16 other people, also managing and working with 300 and some hotels that I was responsible for. Just highlighting those items quickly within your resume it helps people to understand that you're working in a different environment and not necessarily going into a facility day to day.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Janet. Bill, can you answer the question?
Yeah, so you know, I think you know, before you actually, interestingly enough, I started the MBA to actually become a leader, to become a manager of people, and about halfway through it, I did, sort of thing. So, you know, I think you know, some of the when I reflect back on, you know, what allowed me to move from an individual contributor to a leadership type of position, you know, it was really about showing initiative. Is being outspoken. And so I think those are important. And I keep going back to what Itza was saying earlier, you know, things like, you know, making sure your LinkedIn profile is updated and shows interesting content, you know, actually, you know, publishing things out there, you know, so interesting stuff from either the, you know, the news or your field or whatever that's happening. So it shows that you're engaged and you're interested and you're energetic and you're engaged in your field is really important, even before you become a manager or, you know, a particular leader in your area. And certainly any kind of leadership role that you could have is an opportunity as well. Now, and I'm not going to do this as a commercial for the armed forces, but I'll have to say that. You know, I joined the armed forces and became a leader very quickly from that perspective. So as an officer, I went to officer candidate school, and you know, very quickly you get a level of responsibility that's significantly higher when you're 22 years old and you're working programs or in charge of programs that are in the millions and tens of millions of dollars. So sometimes it's a matter of you know, taking that opportunity and being engaged. And I did it, as a lot of people say, I did join the military to make money, but I got a lot of leadership skills very quickly, and that's what they trained you for from that standpoint. So there was some advantage there as well. And in terms of, yeah, you know, making people sure that you can work and live in a remote environment, just as Janet said, I think it's a matter of communicating the fact that you've worked with you know, companies that are in a variety of locations, and you've had peers or managers or people who work for you that were you know, outside the place you resided in, and you know, being able to be successful with that. Remote management is something, it's a skill that you have to learn. You know, at one point in time, I was actually based in Mountain View, and there wasn't a single direct employee that was in that location. In fact, even my admin was in a different location. So being able to talk about that and you know, work that into your resume will certainly make you more attractive. You know, and also, you know, kind of understanding the tools, the social tools, the, you know, Zoom and LinkedIn and things like that. I just went through a recruiting event for students, and you know, half the students couldn't actually get Zoom to work. I mean, it's relatively simple things like that practice, work with the tools and so forth to make sure that when you have an opportunity, you can actually get in and be competent with them is also important as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Bill.
Sure.
Omid, what would you look for to demonstrate leadership on an applicant resume or LinkedIn profile? And is there something that you would recommend students to add to show remote skills specifically?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. When I look for leadership, it can be basically, in a resume, it can be formal or informal. And what I mean by that is, I'm not specifically looking for, did you have that title, like you were called that? Some good examples that I've seen is like people who talk about maybe their projects, like let's say you have a senior project and you were the one that helped sort of head that or lead that, or you helped bring the people together. That's a way in a resume that I think, even if you haven't had job experience just yet, it's an opportunity that you've had to work with people and bring them together and help lead a team. You don't have to actually have the title and be called that, but it's what position and what stance you took during that, project. So being able to show that in any sort of maybe a project sense, and maybe it was even a project at something you had external. Maybe you were working with groups at a high school or middle school, right? But putting that sort of experience in there in a resume does catch my eye. But not only that, and I'll take it a step further, the impact that you had and what you were able to do with that, I think is very important too, because some people may say, yeah, I was in a leadership role, but what I like to dither and get down to and sort of see is like, what were the outcomes of that? Like what happened? Did the team fall apart? Were people actually able to come together and be more cohesive as you became a part of that? So really being able to give examples or show what sort of impact that you had, I think is definitely huge. I think as leadership, becomes more virtual or becomes more remote, maybe in current times, I had a good example of this actually in another senior project. They were talking about, hey, we set up Zoom calls, we took initiative, we had calls back and forth and video. So being able to show those skills too, that you're able to still do that, as the times are sort of shifting for this period, I think is super monumental as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Omid. Janet, do you have some top tips for students on how to best prepare for interviews? Any additional considerations for virtual interviews?
So I'm laughing because I was having this conversation about 2 hours ago with a student. Is you have to prepare, and utilizing your campus resources, that even though you may not be on campus, they are still there to help support you. And practicing is going to be one of the best opportunities for you to kind of up your game. When you may have taken the opportunity to do in the past, like different training and working with a fellow student. But sometimes what I find when students are working together and they say, okay, can you give me some critique on my skill? Is everybody's like, oh, that was great. And then we all move on. It's like, oh, I did great during the interview. But by you utilizing the services that are available to you, to use your career service folks to kind of do some of that mock interview with you to help you to practice, because realizing that STAR method of, being able to articulate and give an answer in a concise manner is, we don't have a lot of time to, formulate the decisions of, do you have the skills and the abilities? So that STAR interview process is extremely valuable. And something, like I said, it's the practice piece that's important.
Perfect. Bill, can you provide some top tips for the students as well?
Yeah, I think, and Janet hit on this as well, preparation is really important. There's a number of different interview books out there that you can use, and make sure that, the the top 5 or 10 questions that you have a good answer for and a good format. And Janet hit it on the head. Conciseness helps. You should have a 5-minute answer to tell me about yourself. My favorite story there is I had a 30-minute interview with someone, and I asked that question. That was my first question. They took 30 minutes to answer that question. now, I mean, I can't tell you that they didn't get the job from that standpoint. So that's a great question to ask, and you might be hit with it because, as Janet was saying, people want to know how you can communicate in a concise manner, a fair amount of data, and so that's really important. Practicing, I thought that was a great idea. Either get a friend, get a family member, go to the career counseling center, have someone ask questions and practice that. Worry about things like posture and what you're wearing and all those kinds of things are important. And those are in guides as well. As far as, since a lot of us are having these interviews remotely, it's again, make sure you know how to use the tools and you know how to use the tools ahead of time. And also things like, lighting and these kinds of things can be helpful. So spend some time on that as well as you go forward. Probably one story I had, the interview for this job here, which I got 6 years ago, I came out actually a day early to make sure I knew exactly where the place was, that there wasn't any kind of hang-ups from that standpoint, and I could get in and be available. And, I got there early, and made sure, I think it was there 15, 20 minutes early to make sure I was prepared. So there wasn't any hiccups from that standpoint. So those are some of my recommendations. And that actually applies online as well. Make sure that you join the Zoom, 5 to 10 minutes ahead of time. And so, if you have a problem, you can easily accommodate for that, and maybe you'll have to make a phone call because Zoom just won't work for you today, sort of thing. So be aware, people do understand, that technical difficulties happen, and so kind of be prepared, have the person's phone number or whatever. So if your Zoom's not working, your internet's not working, you quickly call in and say, hey, look, sorry, internet's not working. So be prepared for those kinds of things.
It's great tips. Thank you, Bill. Omid, do you have some top tips for our students?
Yeah, this is going to sort of sound like a rehash, but I agree with everything that's kind of come down the pipe so far. So just to rehash some of this, I think it's super critical to work with each other and work with different peers to get multiple perspectives. And what I mean by work with each other, I mean like set up mock interviews, do it over Zoom, do it over WebEx. You can find some pretty basic STAR questions that are actually out there, and you can mock test each other on those. As was brought up by Janet, I think it is super important to use your career services, et cetera, because that will give you a broad range of perspective versus if you're working with just your peers, you may only get a limited viewpoint there. So I think it's super important to do that. Some common interview questions that might come up, let's say you had a conflict in a project. How did you guys overcome that? How did you work through that? Another one that commonly comes up, and I speak for us, is let's say you missed a critical deadline. What did you do about that? How did you overcome that? So those are a couple of questions maybe you can take and think through offline. And the other point that I'll make on that is as you work with each other and you ask each other these questions, what you'll realize is maybe you have a better example that you can think through than the one that you initially thought of. So working through the questions just at a first pass, a lot of times you'll realize maybe there was a better example. The other point that I'll add to that, and these are STAR questions, and for STAR, it's you have basically, you want to be as concise as possible. You want to set the situation. You want to talk about the task and what your part was within that, the action that you took within that, and then what was the end result, whether it be positive or whatever it may be. You want to be able to convey it sort of in that concise set. And just to add to that point, it's always better to use actual things that happen. I found some people that use like the generic, like, well, I haven't been in that, but here's how I would go about it. If you can think back to actual hard examples, it's definitely much more helpful. And then to the last point of, you know, now it's virtual, more or less per se, some tips on that I would just give is first impressions is like be proactive. Definitely like have the camera on, be on time, and then have any technical like difficulties worked out, make sure everything's working. Like I definitely myself fail on the marks here. We've had a few Zoom issues actually in the past year too, and I came with the thought that like, hey, it's probably worked out by now, but it wasn't. So for me, like I obviously failed the marks here, but think through the rest of these here, and don't use my example here, but yeah, definitely do things through these.
Perfect. Thank you, Omid. Okay. So Janet, what are the best ways for students to network in your field? Is it professional associations, meetups, conferences? What would you recommend?
All of the above. You know, right now, in realizing that right now it is a challenge, that networking component, because a lot of the things that we are doing are in that virtual environment. But every opportunity that you have is, if it's getting on, you know, a Zoom meeting, is you're thinking, well, you know, they're not going to recognize me. And the reality is that I have, you know, a number of schools that I'm responsible for. So if every meeting that I am doing with San Jose State, if I see your name on my list, I'm like, oh, that's somebody who, you know, is attending every meeting. And it may require me, or it may, sorry, I'm seeing people pop on. I'm distracted. That it may, you know, cause me to think about you. And then I see your resume. So again, every interaction that you have, regardless of the medium and what you're doing it, is definitely to your advantage. People that are reaching out to me via LinkedIn, and again, they're sending me a message of why they want to connect with me, because as you know, I always do this reminder of, there is one of me and hundreds of students. So again, is how is it that you want to connect with me? Do you have something specific you want to share? But taking advantage, regardless of what the medium is, to interact with people.
Thank you, Janet. Bill, what are your recommendations?
Yeah, well, certainly, you know, all the societies and so forth and events that you can keep up with. I think it's important also to actually continue to engage with your network. So if you you know, work your LinkedIn account together, then, you know, make sure that you reach out, and, you know, when people come in and send you a message, you know, like respond to it. If they post something, say, hey, that's interesting, or, you know, support them from that standpoint, and kind of get in that sort of habit. So again, sort of being, you know, quote unquote alive on LinkedIn, I think is a helpful thing. And you know, again, keeping track of those people that either are in roles you'd like to be in, or can be mentors for you, I think is pretty important. And this is a great time actually to figure out some mentors, and, you know, set up some Zoom calls. You know, because, you know, the reality of it is we're constrained on what we can do. So I'm actually doing more informal kind of stuff than I was when I was kind of running around and on planes, you know, 50% of the time. So a lot of people, I've never actually had someone say, no, I don't want to be your mentor from that standpoint. So don't be bashful around that. And you can get a lot of help that way, especially if you want to get into another field.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill. Omid, what are your recommendations?
Yeah, a lot of points, again, already hit on, but I would say one of our biggest ones is that we have an ongoing relationship with San Jose State, basically at the career fair. So I think it's important to continue to show that you're interested. I know on our side and in our system and what we use, we can actually see like how many times someone has been involved in the different events. And definitely continuing to show involvement in an employer, I think definitely helps because it shows you're about it. So the persistence there, I think, is definitely helpful. We do, as a company, we do different training seminars too. If you're looking for a way to network and get in with field professionals, you could definitely sign up for one of those trainings. They were done in Santa Clara previously, but I assume we're going to be moving into a virtual environment there too for those training sessions. So that's another way to get in with people in this field. As was mentioned, LinkedIn definitely is a way that you could get in. Don't be discouraged though on LinkedIn is what I will say, is because I've seen people reach out to others and they may not be the right, person, but if you're not able to connect or get a conversation going with someone, don't get discouraged. I would say continue to try. And then there's external organizations too, if you're looking to network, such as for us, things like High Tech High Heels, where a lot of TI employees are invested in. So there's different internal or different external avenues you could definitely take. So you could definitely give some of those a try.
Great. So there's a couple of questions that come in through the Q&A, and I know we're running really short on time. In fact, I think we're a little bit over time right now, but let's see if we can get through these two questions quickly. So I have one question that came in. It says, if most of our work experience is bound by NDA, how do we show our body of work in the hiring process? Janet, do you have any suggestions?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it says, if most of our work experience is bound by NDA, how do we show our body of work in the hiring process?
So NDA meaning they can't really talk about it?
Non-disclosure.
That's what I'm
Thank
assuming.
you. Okay, that's
Non-disclosure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm relatively new to Lockheed Martin, but I run into a lot of people that tell me, that, and I ask questions, and they're working on projects that they can't really talk about. And maybe I may not be the best person to answer this question at this point, but again, you're working on projects, and we know that if you're working on top secret things that you can't share it, but what are the skills, what are the number of people that you're working with, how were you successful in completing the mission that you were on? Those are the kind of attributes that we're going to be looking for. And again, because I haven't spent a great deal of time working in that, I'm going to kind of throw that either over to Amit or Bill.
Okay.
Yeah, I would 100% what Janet said. So in other words, you can't really give specifics about exactly how much revenue or exactly some piece of intellectual property, but you can talk in general about how impactful it was, maybe round numbers. You can talk about how many people were engaged. Was it a worldwide project? These sorts of things. I think most people who are going to hire you in the field would understand those sorts of things.
Okay, Amit, do you have anything to add to that?
No, and I would agree with everything that's been said here. But the one thing I would add is, like, how do you decouple it and just get those key skills and relevant items out of that, right? Because at the end of the day, like, if I'm hiring someone, I don't per se care about like the secrets and the secretive portion of it, or even what that thing was. As was mentioned, like, I care about the skill set you gained. How did you work in that environment, that situation? What were the key results that you were able to drive, or what came out of it? What was your portion of it? And you can decouple it to say, hey, I worked on this project, and just change to say this project instead of actually saying what the project was, and then not give the intricacies that, are bounded by the NDA. You can keep it very generic into the skill set and what you're able to come out with it. So I think that would be key and critical, is you can still take those key elements out and just decouple them.
Great. Okay, one last question. Let's see if we can quickly get through this one. In terms of mentorship, we as students, how could we maintain the relationship and how to give back to them? Janet?
So remember that any mentoring relationship is a relationship, and that, you know, is you're seeking out mentors yourself who are going to be a part of your board of directors. And at different times in your life is what the value that that individual mentor brings to you could change. And so it's an ongoing developing relationship, not just for, you know, and I may have Lisa that I go to for, you know, certain things, and then I may have Ryan that, you know, I'm going to use him for another opportunity. So again, don't just think about having a single mentor, but collecting mentors that you're going to use at different times in different parts of your career, or not just career, but also for your own personal development.
Perfect, thank you. I think Bill had to leave. So Omid, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I love that it was referred to as a board of directors. I mean, I think that's actually a really great way of looking at it. Is you have certain individuals for certain facets that you may go to for mentorship. So I think that's actually key and critical, is to have people like that. But to your question of, you know, how do you give back? What you may not realize is just by asking the questions and even just asking for mentorship that you are actually already giving back. I know it's the case for me because I have someone, a couple people that I'm mentoring, and you know, when they ask me a question, it stops and makes me think, and I think through it. And it may be something like the other day, I had someone ask me about a certain tool and how it works, and I thought I knew the tool pretty good, but then I sat there and I was like, wait, I forgot this, and this, and it gave me a good refresher. And then from that, I learned like 2 or 3 new things. So for me, I was like, wow, it's a huge benefit because it's something I had not come to in a long time. So you may not realize it, but organically through just having the conversation and asking for mentorship, you are actually giving back. And then the other point I will make is some people just get a pure joy out of doing it. Like for me, I actually like doing it. I like to have that, you know, consultative collaboration back and forth. So I wouldn't, you know, put too much focus on like, how do you give back to that? Because it may organically just be there and come. You know, if someone says yes and they take you in and take you under their wing, you know, it may be just something that they like to do and something that they get joy and pleasure out of. So definitely like get a list of people together, get, you know, that collaborative sort of thing going, and you'll find that it really is a two-way street more than you think.
Great, thank you. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much for our employer panelists who are here today. Thank you so much, Jana and Omid. And if Bill was here, I'd say thank you to him as well. Thank you so much. And that concludes our employer panel portion. So up next is, perfect.
Thank you.
So up next looks like it will be our alumni panel.
Yes, thank you so much, Lisa, and to those fantastic employers who are able to join us for that panel today. For our participants attending, thank you so much for your great questions and engagement throughout the panel. We're going to take just a quick break, and we'll be back with our fantastic alumni panel at 11:20. So you'll have about 10 minutes to get back and enjoy that panel. Let us know if you have any questions in the meantime, and thanks.